Good afternoon. We have today a very special event. Making Waves started online in the United States, and our guest for the Salon Island 42 is Jay Weissberg, and we are very happy to have you with us, with me and Mihai Chirilov. Jay, good afternoon.
Good afternoon. It's great to be with you both.
So I'm going to immediately start, Jay, because I'm sure that the audience that we have for this salon is very different from the rest of the salons Island 42 that I organize. There probably will be people who love film and who are our audience for Making Waves. Because we do hope that some of the audiences in the United States look at this salon, even though for them it's morning, Saturday morning. So maybe people just have a nice start to think that they will have brunch or whatever. I just will make this brief introduction that regarding the fact that you are really one of the most constant and appreciative critics regarding Romanian films. And as you mentioned, you no longer are today a critic at Variety, where you worked for 18 years, but you are now working for the film Verdict, which I find a very strong title for.
Yeah. So there was some debate about that one.
No, but it's very strong, and basically we live in a radical world today. So the film Verdict, I think,
I think it fits this world.
It fits completely. It aligns completely with this kind of white and black and white way of seeing the world. So at the same time, it is ironic because yes. I mean, what do we wait for? We're waiting for a verdict. I mean, no, there's no longer analysis, nuances. We need verdicts. Jay, I'll start just like that. First of all, however, how is it to be for 18 years the critic of Variety and now leave Variety? Because this, I mean, it's important to know in what kind of mood, in what kind of state of mind are you now? What do you think? Is it that you start a new cycle? Is it that you ended something that really lasted for many years? How is it to make this kind of move?
Not easy, really. I mean, I was incredibly lucky to be associated with a magazine that I have so much respect for, you know, that its history is so important for the entertainment business, not just in the US, but internationally. So for almost 2 decades, I was intensely proud to be a part of that. But then, you know, life changes, magazines change, owners change, and directions bifurcate. The directions go, you know, in opposite directions, and I just felt like I wasn't being able to find the scope that I used to have at the magazine, and so it was time to look elsewhere. And then the film Verdict really literally kind of fell in my lap, as too many things probably do. Rather than my pursuing them, they kind of tend to come to me, which is a bad thing. But it's an organization that's or a platform rather that is only reviews based. So in a way, we have editorial control as well. So it kind of feels like the lunatics have taken over the insane asylum. But hey, you know, at this point, it's time to embrace our lunacy.
Exactly, and then like Mihai already said, this is very much aligned with what's happening in the world. The lunatics did take over, so I mean now it's a different kind of lunatics, unfortunately. But anyway, okay. And do you feel? Just last question about this. Do you feel that there's something that you're going to do differently? I mean, is there something that you didn't do while you were in Variety, writing for Variety, and now Is this idea of yours that was always in your head and you will try to put it in life now?
Oh, no, I think I went through a kind of crisis of when I felt like Variety's interest in international was lessening. And I thought, oh God, what am I going to do with my life? And I think so many of us during COVID also kept on questioning, who are we in relationship to our employment? Are we our jobs? All of that sort of thing. So there's that too much. I think we all sort of, to a probably unhealthy degree, began to reassess who we are and what our lives are, and some healthy, some unhealthy. And I think with the film verdict, I'll be able to review more of the things that I'm interested in, and go to more of the festivals that I want to go, rather than the ones that somebody in Los Angeles thinks are important. So that on that level, it's really quite exciting. And also, we're given more freedom, I'd say, in terms of length, in terms of how we want to write, all of those sorts of things. It's a developing process, and that itself is exciting.
Great. And so in a certain way, you can say that this change came also along with, again, it's an outcome of COVID. Like many of us, we have interrogated a lot of things of what we do, why we do what we do, how we do what we do. And then this need to move on that probably would have lasted for a couple of years still, just was decisive. COVID was decisive for some of us into doing something different. Well, as far as MakingWaves as a festival is concerned, our way in which the festival changed was that, like Oana, Radu, Mihai Chirilov, and myself were joking a couple of months ago, we started to do something like 2 or 3 editions per year, because as a fact, one of the editions of MakingWaves will still be live. We hope that this year we will have a next edition in 2022, and another one is this one that is online, and is the one where we can present the broader number of films. Jay, you are, as I said already, some of the most knowledgeable film critics regarding Romanian film, and of course not only Romanian film, but for Romanian film and for the new generation, the new wave, what we call the new wave of Romanian film. You almost saw all the films that started to be presented and screened, and internationally acclaimed some of them. And you know very well also the authors. You developed through conversational relationships with them, and you do know the Romanian community. You know Transylvania International Film Festival, where you were a guest. Now, let's start with this. If we look today, because you did look to all the films, the 9 films, feature films and documentaries that we are going to present this year. From your perspective, what is the evolution of Romanian cinema since this kind of creative burst at the beginning of years 2000? What do you think about this evolution, and how do you feel the subjects, the issues, the aesthetic sensitivity of the films that you saw for this edition of the festival? And I will invite also Kiri to take over while after Jay is answering this question, so that he has his own question regarding this.
Great. It's interesting because when I was watching the films of this edition, I began interrogating, and I swear that you used earlier, my own relationship with Romanian cinema, and how, in a way, I feel like my cinephilia has matured in a way that Romanian cinema itself has matured, which isn't to say that Romanian cinema wasn't already mature even before the new wave. Of course it was, but it was going in different directions. And I think that similarly, our appreciation for film also develops and matures along the way as we get older and see more and think more. And I like that idea of somehow I felt as I was watching these films a kind of parallel between myself and the films themselves. And when I was watching them, I kept on thinking, okay, anticipating this conversation, thinking about, okay, what, the usual question, what makes a Romanian film? How do you know within literally one frame that this is Romanian? And how frequently I felt that when I was watching the films of this edition, and yet there were always, or almost always, new things that were being incorporated into the mix, let's say, where there seemed to be a better balance than before, perhaps, in terms of style, in terms of content, in terms of, for example, even something like the use of music. So if you've got Mikado, where there's no music until the very end, if I remember right, and it's what we would call the kind of classic Romanian film, where there's a song at the end and that's it. And then you get something like Unidentified, which is really quite full of music, and it's both the Chopin, but using it in very creative ways and interesting ways. The drone shots, for example, and Unidentified as well, which is something that we're not normally thinking about when we think of Romanian cinema. So it's been really eye-opening, I guess, and pleasurable to see that the concerns that we had 10 years ago, let's say, of, is Romanian cinema sustainable? If there isn't a major film in Cannes every year, does that mean that we're failing? All of those questions that we kept on going over and over and sort of beating ourselves up about, with fear that somehow the wave was crashing and things are going to change. And in the end, I think, and again, this also comes from my own maturity, I suppose, increased maturity, or just I'm old, a sense of thinking, no, you know what, we can relax. The films are still coming out. There are young directors that are coming up with their own agendas. Millennials are coming up with their own things that they want to talk about. This year, we've got, one of the things that hasn't been terribly represented in Romanian cinema is, for example, LGBTQ issues. Here we have poppy fields. I mean, there are a number of things I think that are good to see.
And no, just before letting Kiri ask a question, I'm curious, what do you think is the explanation for this kind of longevity? Because of course we do have also our explanation, but is it also the fact that by keeping the attention of the audiences and critics alive, then finally there is a sort of complicity and a sort of attachment that was developed with Romanian film, with a certain kind of style, because there are differences, but there are still common threads to the first moment when Romanian film became all of a sudden so interesting internationally, and now. But what do you think is the explanation for this longevity that we all fear is going to fade, and that things are going to become uninteresting? Your explanation is what?
I'm going to give an explanation, and I'd love to hear both your response to it and Kiri's, because you might think I'm completely off base here, but I think that the amount of international attention that came to Romanian cinema in the earlier part of this century put a very positive spin on a country that wasn't really seen in a terribly positive light for very long. Mm-hmm. And so I think that when young people are given some kind of broader horizons, when they're made to feel invested in something that they can achieve, that therefore you get more people who are thinking, yeah, I want to make a movie too. I can find my creative outlet in filmmaking. And this, if you want to take it outside of Romania, the reason why I think that more women directors are internationally getting their films on the festivals is because we finally let young girls in school know you can be a director too. And that really wasn't the case before. And I think I think it's possible to also say that's true in Romania, that, you know, there's that idea that we've got the attention, we've got the world's attention. Gee, I'd like to do that too. And of course, we're a very visually oriented society at the moment with Instagram and TikTok and everything. Everybody knows how to pick up a phone and make a movie in a sense. But there's already a cachet that has to be attractive. And I think that is part of the explanation. Obviously, I don't think it can be entirely the real reason, the full reason rather. But I think there's more than a core truth there.
Yeah, no, but I think it's true. Kiri, I'm very curious also what you think about it. But just to say, Jay, that I'm not sure the thing with it was indeed a whole generation that was so impressed in Romania by the success of Romanian film, Romanian cinema, that for good or bad, a lot of talented young people in years 2000 decided to follow their creativity through cinema. So indeed, a much more numerous number of young people oriented themselves to towards cinema, while probably they wouldn't have thought this can be a way to go artistically. Kiri?
Yeah. Super interesting so far. I think we're like throwing a lot of ideas so far. Jay, I just wanted to clarify something in relation with your new outlet that you're writing for, the Film Verdict. I am curious because, of course, as people who are very active in the film industry, like myself, Corina, we are always reading these reviews. Okay, I mean, coming from the so-called trade publications, you know, Screen, Variety, Hollywood Reporter, and what it's clear, it's that this is a very peculiar, different style of criticism, because it's a criticism that's not academic, that's not, you know, super egocentric, let's say, like a criticism. It's very industry driven. I mean, what I'm curious in terms of the Film Verdict, your new publication, who is your audience? Because I mean, in Variety's case and all these trade publications, we know who's it's clear who the audience is. It's not like scholars, it's the industry. It's the sales agents, it's the producer, it's the distributors, maybe the artists themselves who just want to have you know, a feedback, but they would be very interested in a verdict, which in many cases these trade publications didn't give. I mean, it's because it was a review that was destined for the industry, for people who buy. It was very money driven, if I am to put it in a very vulgar way. Sort of making you, I was thinking whether I would have ever been invited to write for such publication. I would have felt sort of a slave for the industry, like giving the industry advices, suggestions in a much more accurate way, you know, whether to buy this film or to be interested in this film, or to festival people whether to consider this film. I mean, basically an audience that's not a film audience in what we understand as a film audience, you know, like people who are truly interested in the film criticism per se, you know. It's just like a very this like very critical thinking way, you know, in cinematic terms. They are not interested in industry is not interested in that. They are maybe interested in these like verdicts, you know. Shall I buy this film? Will I win? Will I sell the film in many territories and stuff like that? So I was curious whether Film Verdict follows the same, how the publication position itself in this, because on the other hand, we all know that most publications that are very film driven and like pure, proper criticism driven, they disappear, because on the other hand, we say nobody's interested in film criticism. You know,
Yeah.
so it was like sort of an escape route for film critics to write, to position their critical view for the industry. Is Film Verdict is such a publication, or it's a film magazine?
It's a complicated question, and I'm going to probably go off on different tangents. So if you need to sort of rope me back in because I've gone off, just bring me back. The Film Verdict is designed as an industry publication. Most of us who are writing for it are people who have written for Hollywood Reporter, Variety, Screen before. So we know the industry, we know the players.
Jay, I think that yeah, it blocked. It blocked. So you have to go back and say, because your image blocked and we didn't hear you.
Yeah, I thought it was my connection, but no.
And now we don't hear you. Kiri, I'm afraid that your question was very, very challenging.
Now?
Now, yeah, now it's okay.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay, that was really weird. I didn't even touch anything. So where did it cut me off?
From the very beginning. I mean,
that's what I'm saying. They cut you off because when you were ready to answer the question, no one wanted you to answer that question about film criticism.
That could definitely be the case. So okay. Let's see how I can get behind the censors at this point. Basically, most of the people who are writing for the Film Verdict used to write for Variety, Hollywood Reporter, and Screen. So we see ourselves very much as an industry publication. At the moment, it's just it's a platform, it's a website. During the major film festivals, we also hope to publish print editions as well. So, but we decided we needed to do something when the major trades, Hollywood Reporter, Screen, and Variety, seemed to step back from their international coverage. Their news is still great, and they still have really terrific critics, but they were commissioning less and less reviews for international films if they weren't released in the US. And for us, we felt very strongly that it's the trade's responsibility to let people within the industry know about films that wouldn't otherwise be on their radar. So the idea is that we review it, and then a sales agent or distributor is going to read the review and say, this is interesting for me, this is what I want to pick up. Now, Kira, you said something about how, about honesty in reviewing, whether you're reviewing purely for looking towards the finances or looking for something that's more, shall we say, pure criticism. We all bullshit. I mean, anybody who thinks that every critic has seen all the films that we claim to see in a review, of course, is living on the wrong planet. And at the same time, there are times when I think all of us, when we're writing for the trades, have said things like, will be picked up for distribution by many people, when we kind of don't know that that's true, but we believe so much in the film that we want to kind of give it that push and lie a little bit, hoping that somebody's going to believe it enough to then buy the film. So that's, I think, very much where we're seeing ourselves, not the idea of lying to a public in the hopes of pushing our agenda. But in the end, criticism also for trade publication is about pushing an agenda, I think, as well. It's how we see global cinema, and hopefully, we all have different tastes and we all have different styles. What I like about the Film Verdict is that they're not forcing us to write in a particular style. At the same time, they do want us to direct ourselves towards the industry. And because many of us are already known voices there, there's some kind of comfort in knowing that I don't have to change myself too much, and that people who already know my tastes, whether they like my taste or dislike my taste, I hope that there are both, that they have their own confidence in their own taste to follow through with it, and then to follow us now on the film verdict. Does that answer, Kir? Does that answer your question?
Yeah. And going back to the last part of your intervention about the new Romanian wave, what it meant back in those days and what it means right now, and this like new variety of Romanian films. I remember we were all on the same page back then, you know, ever since the new Romanian wave made a big splash, and we were praising it. We were happy that wow, such a movement that took over everything, and then of course we started to worry, how long is it gonna last? Is it gonna be relevant in 5 years from now, in 10 years from now? Do we need variety? I mean, variety, not the magazine, variety, you know, variety, a bigger variety of the Romanian cinema. Do we need to distance from this trend? Do we need to come up with a different trend? Now we do have this variety, as you said. You look at a Romanian film nowadays and you can barely see traces of what the new Romanian wave was, because you could still find it, you know, some of the hardcore fans of the new wave aesthetic, you know, which are still doing it for all the good reasons and sometimes for all the bad reasons.
Yep.
But now we do have this variety that we were at some point wishing for. Are we in a good place right now with this variety? Is it truly what we were needing back then, when we were like, probably we were like, probably we grew tired of the new Romanian wave because there were like so many people who were faking it. Maybe every wave has an expiry date, and we were hoping that this is the big solution, you know, the variety. Let's have people making genre film. Let's make people doing truly eclectic films, and that are no longer in the very strong and specific vein of the new Romanian wave. Now we have all of this. Are we in a not in a better place, because we cannot be, but are we in a good place? This is our wishful thinking from back then, like fulfilled.
Wow, you're really negative.
No, it's not negative. I'm just like, because I mean, I put myself also in this equation, because this is what I was thinking back then, you know. I was like, let's say, the activist, sort of an activist for this variety, and now I have it, and I'm looking at these films, and do I miss the new Romanian wave? Do I fully embrace what it's? I'm very conflicted. I'm just curious about you, because now we do have this variety. It's very difficult to tackle a variety in any sense, because it's, you deal with different things, you know, and at some point you no longer have the same frame of mind in judging. It's like your head is exploding, you know, with all this variety. And we are just looking at films like they don't belong to a certain trend, to a certain current, to a certain cinematography. We look at them for what they are.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Because
yes.
we cannot compare, we cannot put them in a box, we cannot do anything. Is it better this way?
For me, it's better because I don't like boxes, and I like things sloppy, because I think that life is sloppy, history is sloppy. I don't see art as something that progresses in a traditional way. So I mean, years ago I used to say, and I'll still say it, that a healthy Romanian industry is when you get, you know, crappy popular films that are just stupid comedies, as well as the art house stuff, and you can even expand that idea to more thrillers, more comedies, more genre, as you said. But genre is also a word that I get very nervous using, because everything is a genre in a way. What's interesting is when things go cross genre, I suppose you can say. But it would sound weird to say like I'm pleased with how things have gone. I just see it as a natural progression, maybe put it that way. I don't, I would be upset if things seemed to be in some way more categorizable. And even though that makes it more difficult if you're trying to put something together and make a statement about it, I'm somebody that's always looked for exceptions to statements. So for me, it's a good thing.
And now going along precisely from what Kiri was asking, coming back to this edition of Making Waves, where we have these films, I'm going to ask you a question regarding a number of them. For example, what do you think, Jay, about this, the fact that the two documentaries that we have, Holy Father and Us Against Us, are both dealing with the same kind of relationship between, what do we make out of this subject, which is the relationship with a father that the young person tries to understand in the young person's own process of adulthood. Both films are in a certain way very tough, and in a certain way very tender, but it's a subject. This became a subject. Is this a global subject, do you think? The way that younger generations try to get to terms with choices that were made by parents in a former generation that are not understandable for the younger generations who are living in a completely radically different context. And then I would like to see also again putting the mirror of these two films, for example, Mikado and Otto the Barbarian, because again it's relationship between very young person, adolescent. It's a way of showing that adolescence is like it's like hell in a way, and it can go to very tragic consequences. How do you analyze the subjects? Do you find these are Romanian subjects? Do you find they are European subjects? Do you find that they are much more of global subjects? I was speaking with Kiri doing this introduction to the films, and I personally felt that all the films were about abandonment. In a certain way, there's this subject of being abandoned. And Kiri was saying, yes, but it's not there's a lot of violence and aggressivity, and there's aggression, and that there's rage in these films. That's a lot of rage. So how do you think, what for you as a critic, but also as someone who sees these films now, what do you think about these issues that are very repetitive in all of the films?
Yeah, no, that's very, very true. First, looking at the two documentaries, it's certainly for me not a specifically Romanian subject. I see it very much in, for example, Lebanese documentaries. I see it in documentaries throughout the world. If I want, there's a part of me looking at the world in general, and this does not mean simply film, and the younger generation's obsession with with Instagramming themselves. It's all about them in so many ways. This sort of sense of looking only at themselves and their social circle. And it used to be, we would say that people who grew up in the 1970s, that was the me generation. And there's a part of me that thinks very much that, no, actually the generation now, the millennials really are much more the me generation than the generation from the 70s. And yet at the same time, I'll contradict myself by saying, and yet this is a generation that is very active in terms of, let's say, the environment. So there's a constant contradiction for me with how people are looking at themselves and then looking at the broader world. Certainly the two films that we saw, that we're seeing in this edition, the two documentaries, as you said, Holy Father and Us Against Us, are very much people are trying to understand themselves through understanding their relationship with their fathers. We've been doing that for centuries. Fine, perfectly fine. The question is it you just, as long as you make it in a way that's interesting for others, then great. And they are. So that's not a criticism of the two films. So with the abandonment issue, though, absolutely is huge in many of the other films, and the rage is so present. I mean, Otto the Barbarian, which is a film I really like enormously, he's a punk rocker. So rage is kind of factored in from the very beginning. The moment you see his hair, okay, this is somebody who's angry. He's angry at the world, because that's what punk is, and how do you express that punkness? At one point towards the end, when he's at a kind of rave and he begins slamming into people, it's like, well, that happens at a rave anyway. Is that, is this something unusual? I can't really, though. I'm always hesitant to make blanket statements. So there's a part of me that says, okay, I could say something like, so many hopes and dreams about where Romania would be at this time have not been fulfilled, where we were hoping the country would be, let's say, what we thought 15, 20 years ago have not been fulfilled. The amount of corruption is enormous, involvement in EU politics, all of that sort of thing. You can say there's a lot of anger. And so is that the anger that we're seeing reflected in the films? Is that why it seems to be so all-consuming? And I don't know that that's the answer, really. As much as that anger is real, the frustration is real at the same time. You can also say at a certain point you reach saturation point and you reach burnout and you can't deal with the anger anymore. So you just do something else. You I don't know, maybe you make a comedy, maybe you do something to kind of jolt yourself out of the anger / apathy of the time that we're living in now. I don't know.
My question, Jay, is also in relation. Let's for example take three of the iconic films of the new wave, like Death of Mr. Lazarescu, 432, and 1208 East of Bucharest. There was no abandonment. There was no apparent rage in any of them. It's any of these films are there was this kind of all the three of them in my perspective were about coping, how one copes with a situation that is extreme. It was about coping. I mean, in a sense that each of these films is about how you cope, what's your instrument of coping with a reality that is very, very tough. Or here, the rage is in relation to sort of, as if you smashed the door to coping. You no longer want to cope. You want that the reality is different. And the reality is not different. It's what it is. So just and maybe, I don't know, it's a question that I also addressed to Kiri. I mean, for me, there is this kind of shift, a huge shift that also expresses the perspective of the directors, because directors who do these films have themselves a different philosophical perspective than Puiul Mungiu and Porumboiu. I mean, what do you think about it? It's for me, it's a question, in fact, mirroring Romanian society in a completely different way.
You know, I would say, however, that there is abandonment in Lazarescu, and not just the very simple one of the fact that this man is being abandoned in a hospital or multiple hospitals. But for me, there's a part of that film is very much about our abandonment of our social ties, that they've atrophied to such a degree that we have abandoned our relationship to our neighbor, and our relationship to our humanity. And I think that comes through, obviously, very clearly in Lazarescu, and it comes through very clearly in 4321. But the anger is not there in the way that, as you're saying very rightly, as the rage, which is an even better word maybe, that we're seeing in the films now. But I'm trying to sort of think about it in perspective of other national cinemas. And that's going to be the tougher one to deal with. I see, and I mean, there's my own rage, frankly, at the fact that 20 years ago, I had a sense of optimism about where the world was going, that, you know, things might be bad, but we were moving to something better. And I lost that. As many of us, I think, have lost it. And yes, there are always the generations that say, you know, yes, throughout the centuries, it was just, oh, you know, it was better before, you know, I have no hope, that sort of thing. Somehow this seems more acute at the moment. Maybe it's just because we're living in it now. I don't know the answer to that. I'm not a philosopher in that way. But I think that rage also comes from the sense of disempowerment, that we don't feel like the changes that should have happened have succeeded. And suddenly, I don't know why, Alexander Nanau's film, the hospital film, God, why am I forgetting the title? The documentary.
The hospital?
Yes, it was a hospital, yeah. No, Alexander's documentary about the fire.
Collective.
Thank you, Collective. Thank you.
Collective,
thank you.
yeah.
Yeah, thank you. Sorry.
Yeah.
I mean, Collective also was a film that I think was made out of anger, and that provoked a tremendous amount of anger at a situation, again, where we feel like the hope that we're expecting is being taken away from us. And that creates rage. That creates, maybe it's because also there's a sense of sort of, you know, we are more connected rather globally. So we see more about what is around us outside of our own borders. And that, I think, to some degree also increases the rage.
Yeah, but that was in fact my idea was to show to which degree this kind of reaction and mirroring Romanian society, basically also the films are mirroring anxieties and problems and issues that are much more global. Now, before letting Kiri ask you another question, I would like Jay to know, what do you think about poppy fells? I'm very curious, because this is again a subject that was very rarely dealt with in Romanian film. There are films with this kind of subject, but not very many. But however, I think that Eugen Jebeleanu found a very interesting angle to treat the subject, and the script author also. And what is also interesting, I believe, is that the film is done in a certain way that shows that Jebeleanu is also a theater director, because he is a very well-known theater director in Romania, and all of a sudden he decided to do film, and is one of the theater directors who really succeeded in doing good films, because this doesn't come like, you know, naturally. It's two different completely two different ways of doing art. So what do you think about poppy films?
One of the things I like very much about it, and I find rewardingly intriguing, are the different tensions that he's playing with. So it's not just the gay straight, it's also the fact that he made the boyfriend Muslim and a practicing Muslim, which is really unusual to bring that level into it as well. And the scene where he's looking through the door and seeing him during the call to prayer, it was something that you're not sort of expecting at all. So I like the fact that it's not simply a question of homophobia. There are other elements that are being worked in that case, it's there, but it's not, it doesn't create, it's a grace note. Well, grace note isn't the right word. It's a minor key that creates a greater work, shall we say. There is a part of me that thinks, okay, this is something I've seen a lot before. It's a subject that has been dealt with a lot in cinema in many ways. But that doesn't make it invalid in any way. It doesn't make it less, I don't want to use the word worthy of being watched, but it remains a good, solid, emotionally grabbing film that uses a certain theatrical way of recitation and plotting, shall we say, the progression of character development, all that sort of thing is very classical in many ways. But adding elements that make it into something quite full.
That's true. I think that it's a very special it's a very special film, and I personally am very curious what Gebelanu is going to do next in terms of film, because he still, he's doing he's staging a lot. Kiri?
Jay, I will comment a bit on what you were saying in relation with the films that we are playing this year, and I want to ask you something about it. Talking specifically about this anger and rage, which is prevalent in most of the films this year, and Corina was arguing that it was not existing in the Romanian films of the new wave. The main drive was a different one, and I will remind you, of course, that because we were talking back then, everybody was like talking and trying to understand how this miracle of the new Romanian wave was possible. And I think one of the best interpretation I've heard, it was given by you. Why the way it was done, the way it was. That's why it was so successful. It had to do with the artist's position towards the society they were growing up in. Most of them, if you talk about Lazărescu, if you talk about Mungius, they were like, okay, belated answers and truly like an expression of sort of an anger, but diminished by the passage of time towards the system, towards the society, towards the establishment. How that miracle was possible, and it was of the new Romanian wave. You had authenticity, you had this anti-establishment strong position of all the filmmakers, and that anger was towards that. You have all that refusal of manipulation because of living for so long in the communism. That's why you had all those like long takes, the lack of editing, no music manipulation, it was authentic, it was morally ambiguous, because most of the subjects, they come from a time where they had to learn living with compromising. So you had a lot of moral ambiguity. These are, I think, true values of the new Romanian cinema back then, which personally, I cannot quite find them in nowadays films. I mean, moral ambiguity, not so much. That brilliant, true to life acting, not so much in the new films I'm talking about. Authenticity, not so much. I mean, what we do have nowadays, I think, is this variety in terms of film form that includes artificiality, includes manipulation, includes all those like cinematic tricks, you know. And what I find intriguing for me, and I still cannot put my finger on, is why this rage, you know, in nowadays film. And not necessarily why this rage, because we do have reasons to be angry about the system. You said something about Otto, the punk guy. Usually, punk movement was something that appeared as a reaction towards establishment, towards a system, towards. Otto doesn't have a problem with the system. He has a problem with his parents. The daughter in Us Against Us has a problem with her father.
Yes.
The guy in, I mean, it's like all these, most of the people who are angry about something, they are not angry about the system. They don't question the system. They don't question the establishment. They question their close relatives. They question people. It's like they try to find the people around them guilty for something that they are not necessarily guilty of. It's like they close their eyes to how fucked up the system still is and the establishment. What I find, maybe Collective was somewhere borderline. Maybe I think it was the last Romanian film that was still tackling the establishment, you know, and trying to build bridges towards empathy towards the other. You don't have much empathy towards the other, like in Lazarescu or in 432. You are angry about the system, but you found comfort in your friend who was doing everything for you. The medical assistants in Luminița Gheorghiu, I mean, the system was rotten, but she was doing something. I mean, you found comfort in this, like in the tenderness of the human relation. You don't have this anymore. You know, and you are saying about connectivity. We are connected. We have friends. We should be closer to each other. Yet again, if we are to find a scapegoat, yes, it's the system, it's the father, it's the mother, it's the grandparent, it's the daughter, it's this, it's the one who's close to you. It's the easy way out to express your anger. And I'm questioning this because I kind of, to me, art and Romania, and that's why New Romanian Way was so great and relevant, is that it was embracing this human connectivity and it was attacking the establishment from back then and from nowadays. We don't have this nowadays. It's like, to me, it looks like all these people are okay with the establishment, which
and that goes back to what I was saying earlier of the me generation is now. It's not the people from the 70s who were, let's face it, who were, you know, marching for civil rights and marching against the Vietnam War. We don't have that now. We have people who used to march for the environment, which is great, but I think I agree very much that we're looking too much into ourselves.
You do have, I mean, of course, I mean, this is not completely lost, you know, like fighting for a cause. And we do have this nowadays, you know, but it's also very easy to spot a bit of fakeness in this. I mean, people who are marching for the environment are the first one who damage the environment with like very obvious proof, you know, people who are supporting causes are the first one who give conflicted solutions about those causes, you know. I mean, it's very, I mean, to me, and because I was trying to point out, you know, because I always had this feeling about these Romanian films recently, especially the ones that are made by the new generation. It's like this fear of the new generation to tackle the system. And
But,
if they
but I would add,
have anger, it's always someone close to them who's guilty.
But Kiri, now to really stir a reaction in Jay, I would say that it's a generation that, because I do agree with Kiri's perspective, it's a generation also that is apparently incapable of having a perspective, and that's the question. Why is it so that because you need a scapegoat, right? But you don't identify correctly who is responsible for what is happening. You don't identify it correctly. You completely have this kind of syndrome of transfer where you put the guilt on, you transfer immediately the guilt on the proximity, because you don't question the system. When Kiri says we don't question the system, yes, you don't question the system also because you don't have perspective and you are not curious about the system. It's however impressive to see that in the younger generation, as soon as you go to to see if young people know about how the world works, even in basic terms, how a state works, what means a government, etc., you will find out that they just are ignorant. They live in a sort of a bubble of images and passions and lust and games and TikTok that basically is a buffer, stops them from understanding that there is a system whose decisions impact on their lives. Now, also what Juana is writing, that someone on Facebook says that the director who really that does absolutely not have perspective that is a me perspective is Radu Jude, but our answer would be that Radu Jude is also from the Mungiu, Puiu, etc. generation. We are speaking now of a much younger generation. So how would you comment on this, Jay?
Well, let's face it, we've always blamed our parents. I mean, this is hardly a new thing. We've always the first that's the the go-to scapegoat is what our parents did to us and how they fucked us up. And Lord knows I could take up the entire discussion now talking about that. But as I'm sure all of us could. But so I don't think that that's a surprise to me at all, that there are two films which are dealing with, what am I, how do I see myself through the prism of my father? That, yeah, I think we all go through that. The question is, how do you expand from that? As you're saying, Corina, it's not, it can't just, I mean, there has to be a balance, because yes, you've got it's the home environment, but we're also living in a world, and we are living in a world that is more connected, however much we want it. But at the same time, to sort of look, I think, to look at Romania as somehow being an exception is also problematic, because if you look at something like the shocking low election turnouts in France, which I find deeply disturbing every time I read, and the same thing is true here in Italy as well. It's deeply problematic to me that this seems to me a global thing, that we've reached a stage where younger generations who should be excited by the idea that they've turned 18 and they can make a vote, they can cast a vote for the first time, and are not doing it. That for me is so symbolic, if that's the right word, of where we are as a society now, that we're not looking to change the system, maybe, because we've decided that the system is too broken to fix.
Or maybe we agree with the system.
Oh, shit.
Look, Jay, look what happened during the pandemic. I mean, in the pandemic, you had a lot of many people who are actually embracing the system. And by the system, I say embracing the restrictions, no matter how illogical they were and absurd. They were not able to question or judge this. You know, it was just like accepting the fact that the establishment want their goodwill, was in goodwill, you know, which for our generation who's coming, who has a long history in dealing with governments and with system, we all learn that we shouldn't trust it. We vote for it, we express our votes, we try to find, you know, to vote for the people who are the closest to do good things. But we come from a generation that was not in big trust with the system. To me, and especially if we are to bring the pandemic in the equation, what I found truly weird, disturbing, was the way a lot of people were embracing the system and what the system was and the establishment was proposing, and as measures and everything, where many of us, if we were to think just for 5 minutes, would have found a lot of them not accurate or wrong, as it proves nowadays that it was. So that's why I was telling you, you know, that I fear actually that the younger generation is in tune with the system. But that's my
doesn't question that's the system. That's I mean, when
by not questioning it, it could mean that you're okay with it.
Or that you are completely indifferent, you take it for granted, you don't imagine another system. Now, also, if why I'm saying this is because when we were living in communism, of course, at a certain age, you started to question the system. But because I was born during communism, you were born during communism, when we were very young and we took things for granted, our parents would tell us from time to time, you know, it's not like this, it's not like that. But there was, and in my case, it took me a while, being only adolescent, late adolescence, made me start really question what was going on at school and the things that we were told. Some of them were gravely wrong, and this again is that's my reading of it. You also don't question because on the one hand you trust or you align or you think it's true, but on the other you just have the impression that this is it. This is a system you lived in and your preoccupation is someplace else. So you don't imagine it can be different, and that you don't imagine it's your responsibility. What I would say mostly is that, again, to come back to directors, the generation of Puiu, Mungiu, Radu Muntean, Porumboiu, Jude is a generation where the individual still feels responsible for the society, while the very young generation feels responsible for oneself. It's again the me thing. I'm responsible for what I do. I have to negotiate all the time my well-being. I mean, it's not about the well-being of the other. Of course, rhetorically we speak about it, but in practice we only practice this kind of individualism.
And that's very American. I'm sorry. To me, that's something that's been infected by American.
I agree.
And you know, you look at independent American cinema, and this is true for ages, and it's so navel-gazing. It's so much within its little bubble and not looking outside. And I think that actually is something that has had a negative impact on world cinema in general, and through cinema we can say, I think even, I think we can break the barrier and go beyond cinema. I think, Corina, also what you said earlier is very valid with where Kiri's talking about a younger generation that's accepting the system, and your comment about, or is it acceptance or just simply indifference? And I think it's more indifference. And I think, I'm not sure that it's accepting. I think that they're not guided towards seeing that things can change, perhaps, and then just not being interested in doing anything. I mean, I've just come back from Egypt, where Lord knows the system is the worst dictatorship the country's ever had. And the number of young people who just don't want to hear politics at all, because they're tired of it. They don't want, they want to live their lives. They want to get on with whatever it is that they can get on with, and not, what's the point of going up against something that they feel they're going to fail? Like the revolution failed, and we can get back into the composition of revolutions too, but I think that's opening up a whole other can of worms of us beginning to compare revolutions at this point, Romanian, Egyptian, whatever you want to say. Yeah, that probably is not a good idea. But I mean,
but unfortunately, because we still have not so much time, I still have two questions to you, Jay. And if Kiri has another one, let's ask all the question now, because if not, we are going to go too far in time. My first question is a bit of a dangerous one. We all know that we are living through this very unique moment of the war in Ukraine, and I am curious to know, what do you think regarding the ban of Russian artists, not those who really manifested clear attachment to Putin, but those, and to the regime and to the war, basically, but those who are resisting and who face now this kind of double punishment of being banned because they are Russian, just because they are Russian? I mean, how do you position yourself towards this? Because I think this is a very complicated and complex approach, and it's only us who can make a stand regarding that. And the second question, sorry?
No, okay, yeah, sure. I mean, look, the Cardiff Symphony has just banned Tchaikovsky from their programs. What the hell's that? I mean, what kind of stupidity is that? So I was really pleased. I mean, I was looking, I've been reading a lot about, let's say, the Ukrainian Filmmakers Association saying that all Russian films need to be banned, no matter where they come from. And then somebody like Sergei Loznitsa saying, oh, hang on a moment.
Yeah.
Let's look at who the filmmakers are and where their money is coming from. Yeah. And I think that's what we need to be looking at. Who's supporting those films, and what are those films saying? Because the moment that we stop, the moment that we cut off dialogue, the moment that we cut off the people who are trying to criticize the system,
you are blocked again. You are blocked again, Jay.
No, you're not. I can hear you.
Okay. So
really?
It was me.
Yeah.
Was me.
Oh, okay.
Sorry.
Okay. Sorry, Corina, can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay, but so the moment that we cut off these voices of dissent, no matter where they're coming from, is the moment that we fall into error. We fall into we're in a very bad place, I think, and so obviously we can't go through official systems. I would not hire Valery Gergiev at this point to conduct an opera, because he's a supporter of Putin. He's vocal about that. But what about those filmmakers who are looking to challenge what's happening? Are we going to, if somebody's making a documentary within Russia about Navalny, are we going to say, no, we can't show that film?
Yeah. Absolutely. We also agree on that. So that was the question. Now, I do feel also obliged to ask you about the shorts, but maybe this is something that did you look at the shorts?
I've watched a number of them, not all.
And which one did you find interesting, and why? What do you feel about this emerging voices?
Well, I mean, first of all, it was kind of funny that intermission for Autonomous Vacuum and the End of the World seemed somehow, watching it now, seemed quite amusing. The idea of listening to this news broadcast saying, yes, the world is really ending. I was like, wow, really? Okay. No singing after 8. Also, look, I mean, that's something that we're not seeing. You know, when was the last time we saw an out-and-out Romanian musical influenced by French musicals? We haven't seen that before. And so it's lovely to have that in the mix. You know, something like Cradle, I like enormously. In fact, we gave it an award at TIFF last year. I think it won the special mention for Best Short. Still is just beautifully made. Technically fascinating to watch. There is a level of diversity, I think, in the shorts that leads one to be hopeful, but you know, we all know there's a difference between making a short and making a feature. And when you're looking also to get things funded, a lot of times the subject matters that get funded are the ones that are already familiar, the ones that people think are going to work, the ones that European film funds, as we're constantly complaining about, are always, almost always, at least guaranteed to fund. So that also constricts what is being made. Internal and external pressures, I would say.
Great. No, so we also are very happy that we can also screen these shorts, because it's always interesting to see these voices coming out and having the format of the shorts. Even though, as you say, it's something completely different to do a short and a feature film, then it still is important. Now, before I will ask my last question, which regards Queen Mary of Romania, because I know that you are huge fan of hers. I'll let Kiri ask his last question.
Jay,
and before we get, sorry, Kiri.
I'm just curious because there's one single film that we haven't spoken a word of, and I think it's one of the most interesting in this program.
It's two. There's two who we didn't speak. It's two.
And actually, the newest in the program is this hybrid, experimental, you name it, talking about genres, you know. You are Ceausescu for me, because I'm talking also about millennials, and talking about the me generation, and talking about anger, and talking about past, present, and future. I think there's a lot to take from a lot to get from this film about everything and about the future. What's your take on it?
I find it absolutely fascinating. Sorry, there's a truck passing by, so there's a bit of exterior noise. I found it absolutely fascinating. And on so many levels, the amount of time that's passed, how younger generations are familiar with the past, how engaged they are, how serious they take the past, that is not so distant. I liked the mix of black and white and color. I liked the I was completely drawn to it. I want to see it a second time, actually, because I didn't feel that one viewing was enough for me to really fully take on board where it was going. I don't think the director himself perhaps knew always where it was going, which I also liked. The amount of humor in it was really refreshing, at the same time that it also revealed how little is understood about the past.
Mm-hmm. And how little, and not only about the past, but how uncharted the future is. I mean, talking about this media, I think this film kind of sums up all our entire discussion, you know, about this like young generation and their understanding. I mean, look at the young guys in the film. I mean, they can become a Ceausescu in a minute, in a second. You know, I mean, this temptation of being given power and crushing your friend from the film set in a second. It's to me it was frightening. You know, this. I mean, I had a feeling that looking at this film that Ceausescu might come back.
But it's Lord of the Flies, where you know, this is what happens when you get a bunch of teenage boys together. I'm sorry.
Yeah, but also talking about Ceausescu and being given Ceausescu's powers, you know, and everything. I mean, putting all this into context and talking about the future, what to expect, you know, artistically, socially, politically, you name it, you know. I think this film gives us a few hints that are not very pleasing or encouraging. On the contrary,
it also, I think, shows up the ease of how easy it is to lie to a broad spectrum of people and almost believe it yourself. You realize how easy it is actually to pass off falsehoods, and I think that comes through very clearly in the film. But it's interesting. I'm going to make a little bit of brief segue here between this and the other film that we haven't talked about, which is No Rest for the Old Lady. And it's quite amusing that we're talking about the youngest generation and the oldest generation suddenly. But there's a scene in that film, and if we're talking about what makes a Romanian film, what makes Romanian humor, how do we know that something is Romanian? There was a scene in that film that made me, I began to laugh really loudly, and realizing I can't imagine this scene filmed this way any other place, even though it's universal, which is the scene when Emil is at the supermarket and early on, and he's taking a very long time to count out his cash. And the woman at the cashier turns to the guy behind him and sort of rolls her eyes in solidarity. Now, this happens everywhere. I've been that person behind the old guy thinking, oh God, when's he going to finish up? But the fact that the camera doesn't move, the fact that we're seeing her mostly in lost profile, and then she's in such a subtle way, and then she turns back, just eye movement, all of that sort of thing. Again, it's a situation that's universal, but somehow the way that it was filmed, for me, said this is Romania.
And also, Jay, I do think it's important to say for this edition that the main characters are two extremely well-known theater actors in Romania, and also something that is Romanian is this kind of pleiad of extraordinary actors that we have. Not all of them, they reached, you know, the castings of the new wave, so they are not so well known abroad. But when you see these aging actors, both of them are actors from province theaters, but they are lead actors in their theaters, Valer de la Chiesa and Mircea Andreescu, and they bring to the film, in my opinion, like sometimes also. So this is a specificity of our films. When the casting was done correctly, the film was absolutely enhanced by the quality of the acting. I'm Luminița Gheorghiu and Fiscutanu and Victor Rebenjuk and all the great actors that we have made a lot of what it is the new wave in Romanian cinema, and we not very often speak about that.
No, and as Kiri said, I mean, it was interesting to hear you say, Kiri, that you feel like that's not on show, shall we say, at the moment.
Absolutely. Now, my last question, as I said, Jay, is about Queen Mary, because I know that you once told me that you have a passion for Queen Mary of Romania. Now her figure started to be more and more publicized in Romania, and this is good, because I think that historically the younger generations in Romania didn't know who she was, what an important, essential role she had in the building up of Great Romania, of the Romania as a national state, and what an immense influence she had at her time on the development of the Romanian society. And I wanted to just know how did this passion come to you? How did you discover this very important figure in Romanian history?
To be honest, I don't remember how I first discovered her, but as a child, teenager, shall we say, young teen probably, as any young teen would be, you're not attracted by history so much as by something else. And she was somebody who exuded a kind of glamour and romance, which she played to the hilt. I mean, she knew exactly what she was doing with her dresses, what she was doing when she was photographed with lilies, what she was doing when she was photographed at various Romanian folk costumes, all of that sort of thing. She, because the country was so new, relatively new, there had only been one king before her husband, of course. She was looking to sell the country internationally, as well as within its own, as well as to find something that will unite the different provinces, which I found fascinating. And then later on, as I became more of an adult and more of a proper historian, and began looking at the role, what the Balkans mean to the world, particularly to Europe, the idea of the Balkans on our, meaning Western Europe's borders, of people who are slightly more primitive, slightly more sensual, slightly more bellicose. All of these things play into, I think, what Marie herself did in terms of, and her predecessor Carmen Silva as well, using Romanian folk tales, using a romanticized view of history to create to help to create an independent nation, and a nation that felt a certain degree of patriotism. And I find that it's problematic on many levels, but it's also fascinating.
Absolutely, and I'm saying that also because by coincidence today it's the anniversary of Margareta of Romania, who is the daughter of Mihai, the King Mihai. So it's interesting to see that it is important also in Romanian society, for the Romanian society, now speaking about rage and about the reaction of younger generations. I personally am very happy that there were a couple of films done about Queen Mary of Romania, because this makes accessible to younger generations the figure of someone who was very iconic, who believed in values, and who believed that despite all the difficulties and problems and environment and context and historical victimization that Romania was sometimes submitted to, she just believed in her values and found a way in which she turned all these disadvantages into something positive. I think that from this point of view, she does represent a role model and can be regarded as someone who is a very important and luminous figure in Romania's history.
And I would urge people who are watching, if they haven't done this before, you've frozen, Corina. Mihai, are we still on?
Yeah.
Okay, fine. Okay. I would urge everybody, go to YouTube and type in Queen Marie of Romania ticker tape parade, New York. Because we forget that in the 1920s, she visited New York and they put on a huge ticker tape parade. I mean, it's extraordinary to see the confetti being thrown out the window along Wall Street as she's processing down the street. And it's what you expect for a sort of, championship football player or something like that, or Woodrow Wilson after the First World War. But this is the Queen of Romania in New York. And that, I think, tells us what kind of international figure she was and what she did for Romania, just in terms of, for lack of a better word, publicity.
In terms of our presence on the international stage. So I really wanted to end this conversation with a more luminous kind of image, and precisely because the films that we present are not so luminous, and also because we forgot to speak about a third film, which is Wild Romania. The film we didn't speak about, everyone should see it because it's extremely positive. And thank you very much, Jay, for being with us, and thank you, Kiri, for being together with me in this conversation. As always, brilliant conversation is the one in which Kiri is part of. I also wanted to say that for us, Wana, Kiri and myself, Jay, as you know, MakingWaves, the fact that MakingWaves could make it for 16 years is amazing. So we do not wait for confettis in New York, but we really hope that we are a tiny bit of we have a tiny bit of value into making Romanian film better known in the United States.
Absolutely. And I think also just again, we go back, I keep on going back to the hand wringing that we did 10-15 years ago about where Romanian cinema is going. We can't control it, but it's going, and that's good. And thanks also very much to MakingWaves.
Jay, we are film critics. I mean, you write for a trade publication. You can control it.
Well,
I mean, give us some credit, film critic. Otherwise, what's the point of our existence?
Absolutely, absolutely. Let's not forget that this evening the hour changes. So tomorrow we will be 1 hour later. So we really were 1 hour earlier, as always, in our life. Ciao. Thank you so much, Jay.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. See you
very soon. Bye.
Bye.